What's going on, hockey friends? We are back, and it happened again. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been eliminated in the first round in Game 7 again. Now, in this video, I'm not going to discuss the series or Game 7 in particular. Instead, we'll be looking forward and see what the Leafs can do in these coming years and what changes need to be made. And I'm going to split it into management with Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe, and then the Leafs roster itself and what they're missing and what they can do about it. So here's the thing. I don't think anyone should be fired. I don't think Dubas should go. He's done some weird things and there are things you can critique, and I'll get to that later, but overall I think he's fine. And I don't think Keefe should go either, because at the end of the day, the way they lost was different. This wasn't the choke job of last season against the Habs, this wasn't losing to the Bruins in back-to-back seasons. The Leafs were actually good and their star players were performing. Matthews had a primary assist on the Morgan Rielly goal, and in general I thought the Big Four was actually good, but I'll talk about that later. Kyle Dubas had assembled a good team, a great team in fact, and on paper a team that should go deep in the playoffs. But why can't they get it done? It has to be mental at this point, because the team is better than last year, it's better than the previous iterations of the Matthews era teams, and if or when this team does get over that first round hill, I think they will go very far. You look at the Capitals, they were stuck in the second round for pretty much a decade, and then when they finally got past that, they win the cup. And you can't really blame it on experience either, because this core has experienced this losing since 2017 now. Every year when they go into an elimination game, they talk about how much they've learned from past seasons, how ready and fired up they are, only to fall flat. It's crazy how the Leafs are 0-10 in elimination games, and they've even had a match point in some of them. Like, if it's a one-off, fine, it happens, but they lose every time. And now I'm just going in circles and I don't have an answer to it. But I don't think they should blow up the core. You have to keep Matthews, you can't move Marner, and he was actually good this year. Nylander is good and performs in the playoffs, contrary to what the Twitter experts are saying, and you could argue his contract is under market value. So I don't think he should be traded either, but if you are trading him, you can use that contract as leverage. That leaves us with John Tavares, the captain, and you can't move him even if you wanted to, because that's a big contract. He's on the wrong side of 30 and he has a no move clause, so you're kind of stuck here. And that's one of the critiques I have of Kyle Dubas. He's giving these no move or no trade clauses to everyone. Why does Justin Hall need a no trade list? His contract is already bad enough, and a no trade clause makes it even worse and harder to move. Why does Wayne Simmons need one? Peter Mrazek, like, come on. It just makes it so much tougher to make moves, and there will be moves coming in the offseason. And then we have Sheldon Keefe. I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of his post-game comments talking about respect and all this jazz. It's all well and good being a great regular season team and pushing the back-to-back champions to a Game 7. But at the end of the day, you have nothing to show for it. And I don't think you can take pride from a first round series loss. And I saw a lot of Leaf fans talking about how proud they are of this group and the season they had, but I simply cannot agree. Sure, it's Tampa, it's Game 7, but once again, you could have done it in Game 6, and then you score one goal in Game 7, like, that's not something to celebrate. The Leafs were good in this series, absolutely. I'm not denying that, but they still fell short in their most important game, and personally, I couldn't take pride from that, especially when you haven't won one series. Every year it's Game 7, it's Game 6, you go out in the first round, there's nothing to be proud of. You have to instill a winning mentality, and it seems to me Keefe hasn't done that. Not yet at least, and the question is if he can. And I've seen people talking about bringing in Barry Trotz, and I mean, if you want to try that, be my guest, but I'm not going to propagate for it. Alright, so that's my take on management and what you can do with the Big Four. But let's talk a bit about the roster, the 2022 Toronto Maple Leafs, and the future of this team. Because It's a very good team. Obviously, you have the Big Four, the Fabulous Four, whatever you want to call it. Good players, good chemistry, and this season they were actually the leading players. They didn't disappear, and while you can argue they didn't perform in Game 7, which is the most important game, and at the end of the day, you're paid to score goals, I still don't think you can blame this loss on someone like Matthews. If anything, this just proved how Tampa's depth guys were better than the Leafs bottom 6 guys, and that's where the Leafs need to improve. Now the question is, how do you do that given the cap situation? And I alluded to it earlier, but this is where a contract like Peter Mrazek really makes it tough, because he's got a $3.8 million cap hit with a modified no move clause, so that's a really tough contract to move. And not only does it make it hard to free up cap space, it also makes it really hard to re-sign Jack Campbell. I can't see how they re-sign him if they can't move Mrazek, and that leaves you with Erik Källgren, who is capable for sure, but I'm not sure if he's a starter yet, and Mrazek, he's not good enough either. But if we're looking at the bottom 6, I think you have to keep Mikheyev, but you'll have to move someone to free up cap space. I guess you can try moving Muzzin or Justin Hall, but again, they have those no move clauses and their cap hits aren't very, they're bad. Maybe you try moving Alex Kerfoot and try and get a 2-for-1 deal. I don't know. It's a very tricky situation, and I'm happy I'm not in Kyle Dubas's position. And the thing is, it's hard to find these bottom 6 guys that all of a sudden have this insane clutch gene in them. Like, no one thought Nick Paul was going to be the hero in Game 7, and I think the Leafs had to look within their organization, in their system. I think it's time to give someone like Pontus Holmberg a chance to prove himself. We talk about clutch performances, and he was the playoffs MVP in the SHL in 2021, so he's definitely an option. And I'm not a huge believer in adding tough big guys like Ryan Reeves, because they do more bad than good for their teams. But you're gonna need some truculence, and they need to be able to chip in games like these. On the defensive end, it's time to give Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren bigger responsibilities, but they need to be re-signed. Thankfully, they're restricted free agents, but you need to fit them in somehow, and I'm really interested to see if Topi Niemela gets a chance to prove himself as well. The thing with Dubas and this roster is that he's kind of painting himself into a corner here with how big of a percentage the Big Four take up on the cap. It's really hard to build a championship winning team, and it's even harder when you have 4 players that take up half your cap space. The core itself is good, it's championship caliber, and I don't think anyone is arguing against that, and if you are, you're wrong. This is a championship winning core. But hockey is such a team based and luck based game that 4 players simply isn't enough. If you watch football, soccer, whatever, you may know of Spurs. Tottenham Hotspur, historically a team that doesn't win a lot. They haven't won a league title since the 60s, for example, just like the Leafs. But in recent years, they've been a good team, a very good team at times, with some of the best attacking talent in the world, and they have nothing to show for it. No league titles, no domestic cup titles, nothing. And those star players are getting older and more frustrated, and one day they will want to leave if they don't challenge or win something. Kyle Dubas can't let the Leafs become the Spurs of the NHL. And I'm looking at Matthews. He's got 2 years left on his deal. I don't think he wants to leave. I think he wants to become the greatest Leaf player of all time, and I think he's got the potential to do that, but you have to give him and this core a team that is deep enough. I'm generally pretty optimistic, and I'm not a Leafs fan, but just looking at this core of players in a vacuum without the salary cap, it should be winning. But the salary cap is here, the Leafs are pushing against it, and they need to fill out the roster with good depth guys, and that's a pretty hard equation. I think moves will be made, and I'm pretty excited to see how this turns out. And that's my take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know if I gave you guys any real answers. It's just the way I see it. So talk to me in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.